All right. Good evening. My name is Bob Connors. It is now 7:01 p.m. and I'd like to call the April 4th meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission to order. Sam, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call of the members present?
All right. As a preliminary matter, my name is Samantha Holt, Town Staff Conservation Agent for the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors.
Yes.
We do not have Brad Duffin tonight. Diane O'Brien.
Yes.
Mary Rimmer.
Yes.
Peter Pecos.
Yes.
And TJ Conti.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. This April 4th, 2023 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to commission members prior to the meeting for review and were posted on the Conservation Commission webpage for public access. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Proponents will be given 10 minutes to present. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. After they conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone using *6 to toggle mute and unmute when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you, and you should take care not to screen share your computer unless you have been allowed to do so. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and or ask questions as follows. I will seek questions and comments at the appropriate time through the Zoom raised hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. The list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on a raised hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the more function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they appear listed on my screen, based on when the function was selected. Each participant will be called upon to provide his or her name and address or affiliation and will be afforded 3 minutes to make comments. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. The proponent or commission members will have the opportunity to reply as needed. Your hand will be lowered when you've been given the floor for your questions. We will then continue down the list of those in the raised hand column and again afford time for responses as needed. All participants are reminded that only matters which fall into the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission may be discussed. The chat feature has been disabled for this meeting. Everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would at an in-person meeting. Disruptions that impede operations of this commission will be addressed once by the chair and should be acknowledged by the disruptor. Further disruptions may result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Vulgar or obscene actions or comments will result in immediate removal from the meeting with no readmittance. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Hey, good evening, everybody. All right. Upcoming meeting dates, April 18th, May 2nd, and May 16th. My God, it's scary to think we're talking about May. It seemed like it was just Christmas. Right. All right, so the first matter before the commission is the approval of minutes for the March 21st, 2023 meeting. Why don't we take a minute to review, see if we have any comments, concerns, or corrections to the draft minutes as presented. Okay, I do not see any raised hands, so I'm going to assume the minutes look good. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. All in favor, say aye. Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
geez, I get Dan's name here. My God, missed it already.
Aw,
TJ
Aye.
and Diane,
yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes as well.
Can we go back real quick? I know we probably don't necessarily need to, but just for procedure's sake, can we do a quick vote to remain in public meetings, or sorry, remain in virtual meetings if that is what the commission wants to do? Or at least make it
Yeah, well,
known.
why don't we do that under administration, Sam? Would seem to
Okay.
be, that'd be probably a perfect
We can do that.
opportunity to do that. All right, 7 PM, it's well beyond that. Update and status of new public hearings. Sam, could you give us I know that these were required to be re-advertised, and why don't you give us
Yes.
give us your best 30 seconds.
Yep.
Heads up
So unfortunately, there was an issue with the legal ads that were published. So the legal ads are being republished this week, and the public hearings for the Salt Marsh Invasive Species Management, 6 Olga Way, and the amendment for 3 Newburyport Turnpike are all going to be on the April 18th agenda. So that is 2 weeks from today.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next order of business is DEP file number 050-0336, 16 Old Farm Way, for work to construct a new house and pond. This is a certificate of compliance. Sam, could you provide an overview and a recommendation on this
Yes.
matter?
So this is another super old order of conditions. Unfortunately, we had no plans for this. All we had was the recorded order of conditions that did note that there was supposed to be a pond constructed around the 96-foot elevation. I did find a site plan in the building file, but I have no idea if it's the one that was approved for conservation because there's no reference to any plans. So there is no requirement for an as-built due to the age and lack of original information. I did do an inspection on March 28th, and it does appear that everything was done at least in accordance with what is on the site plan in the building file. So my recommendation would be to issue a complete certificate.
All right, let's see if we have any questions from any of the members. Mary, any questions on this one?
Yes, and was the pond constructed?
It was, yeah, it's pretty small, right out behind the house. It does look like it was constructed to basically be like an outlet, I guess, or a reservoir for another connection that's out behind the house. It looks like it's probably like an intermittent stream that was out behind it.
And is it what's around the pond? Is it mowed lawn up to the edge, or is it?
Yeah, just a lawn area. There are some trees out behind it. It looks like the property boundary is sort of a few feet out behind the pond. So there's some trees around it that actually look like they were there before the house was constructed as well. So a lot of the stuff that was out there originally got left behind.
Okay. I guess my only comment then would be that maybe if we do vote for a certificate of compliance, that we include a letter to the homeowner indicating that they have resources on their property that they may not be aware of, and that any work within 100 feet of wetlands requires notification to the Conservation Commission, so that they're aware of that.
No, I think it's a good point. Sam, I knew Frank Remley. He was on the finance committee many years ago. It was probably more of a water feature as a landscape element, right? Than anything
Yeah,
else.
it was intended to be very small. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of it was. So I'm assuming that's probably correct, that it was supposed to be a pretty landscape feature.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe a picture of what it is now for their file for years down the road, and
Yep.
to compare, if it ever has to be.
Yeah, and I did take some pictures while I was out there, so I can print those out and add them to the file.
I think Mary brought up a good point. When you send them the certificate of compliance, give them a heads up on, I think that would be appropriate. Pete, any questions on this one?
No questions, thanks.
Okay. TJ, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Diane, any questions on this one?
Nope.
And I have no questions. Sam, any raised hands from the public? Anyone here that wants to speak?
That I can see.
All right. Do we have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 16 Old Farm Way?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, all those in favor, roll call vote, say aye. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Mary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes as well. All right, next matter. You don't need anything else on that one, Sam, right? You're done?
Nope, all set.
Okay. Next matter, it's a modification, DEP file number 0501391, 68 Green Street, Lot 2. Modification to alter grading and install a retaining wall. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this one?
Yes, so this was, the original filing for this was done back in July. The order of conditions was issued in August. This was for the construction of the house. I believe we do have Mike DeSantos, the property owner, here. I believe what happened was that the design of the house is going to be a little bit different, so the grading around the house needed to be changed, and to compensate for the changed grading, a retaining wall needed to be added. So the modification is for the adjustment of the grading and the addition of the retaining wall.
Okay. Mike, do you want to give a quick presentation, then I'll open up to questions from the members?
Yeah, I can show everyone I don't know if everyone's seen the updated grading plan, but Mike DeSantos, I know a few of you. So this is the last lot in our Farmview Lane subdevelopment, and originally we had designed the home, or the home was intended to be a walkout basement, but now that we've kind of graded and got the driveway roughed in and get back there, the lot and the design of the house calls for more of just like a flat lot, and where the homeowner can walk out of their first floor and kind of just be right level with the ground to kind of get, just that nice farm land behind the house. So we've designed the house with a full basement. In order to do that and get above the water table and not have any water issues for the homeowners in the future, we want to raise the grade up. In order to do that, just so that, we're not sloping. Obviously, the grading had us basically a lot lower than where we were here. And we want to be able to grade this down. And obviously, we didn't want to work too much further into the buffer zone. So Millennium Engineering proposed just doing a 2-foot boulder retaining wall here along this elevation, to just so that we didn't have to continue grading further towards the wetlands. So this is what was proposed, just so that we keep the kind of area of disturbance somewhat within the original silt fence line, I think. And I don't have the original plan up right now, but I could bring it up. I think the silt fence line, if everybody can see my mouse, kind of came along this way back and then jotted back and met up with it here. So we're just trying to adjust it down a little bit and do a little bit more work into the proposed approved area.
Yeah, the original erosion control line came kind of right up next to the house.
Yeah, I can pull it up. Let me see if I have it here. Yeah, there you go. So I can switch back and forth so you guys can see it. I don't know if that's helpful. And that's it. And then Millennium sent over I think someone was looking for a wall detail. So this is just, typical fieldstone wall that they'll usually propose. And I believe it'll be about 2 feet tall.
Well, why don't you hold there if you would, and I'll see if we have any questions. Mary, any questions?
Yes, just so, Sam, was there any discussion about this being an amendment to the order of conditions rather than a modification?
There was since the majority of the project wasn't really changing and it wasn't necessarily just didn't really seem like it was big enough to trigger it being an amendment. I mean, everything, the retaining wall is roughly at 50 feet, which is pretty on par with the typical kind of policy that we have of keeping everything, no disturbance within 50 feet of a wetland line.
Yeah, we're over that, just barely.
Yeah.
And I think that, typically a project that results in work closer to a resource area than the original plan should follow the procedures for an amendment rather than a modification, which requires re-notifying abutters because you are doing work closer, to the resource and potentially closer to abutters. So that would be my only comment. I don't know what the rest of the commission feels. There is a DEP policy regarding when a modification to an order of conditions is appropriate, which is usually to correct clerical errors or field adjustments that are minor in nature and don't really change the scope of the work. I don't see that we would necessarily need to change any of the special conditions in an order of conditions in this case. So I just throw it out there for the commission to consider. And it's another one of those things that we probably need to discuss as a board, what our policy is on accepting modifications versus amendments. This technically a modification doesn't require being submitted to DEP or anything. An amendment would have to be. So this is a plan change that it makes it a little bit more difficult to track since you've got an order of conditions that's recorded at the registry that says the project is something different. So an amended order of conditions would then correct that at the registry and have it clear when a certificate of compliance is issued. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Pete, any comments on this one?
No, just interesting discussion. I think I'd like to hear what other commissioners think about the comments that were just made.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Well, Diane, you're a learned attorney. What is your thoughts on this?
Well, my thought was it would be more of a modification. But the question I had for Sam was whether or not more conditions would be appropriate. Would we be calling for any more conditions than we already had? Because my understanding was for the amendment, usually you do the amendment if we were going to maybe add more conditions or things along those lines. But if we weren't, then my thought was it could get through on the modification. But I don't know, the prior conditions, would we be adding anything? Would there be any more replication or anything because of the retaining wall?
No.
Could you expand the plan that's on the screen now?
Make it larger.
Yes, please, if you
Sure.
would. All right. And just drop it down right so we can see below the.
I mean, is there any larger impact on the area because of the retaining wall rather than the grading? I mean, are they taking anything more out?
We're not taking
Retaining
anything
wall
out.
in?
Yeah, we're bringing in fill, and the reason for the retaining wall is just to retain that so that we didn't have to grade down or to have too much of a steep slope there.
What was there beforehand? Where the grading is now? Did you remove vegetation? And
No.
Was there a replication plan to begin with?
For this area, for that area, no. This is how it was approved, but so for that area, there was no replication plan.
So my thought was just if we weren't going to add any more conditions, then modification rather than amendment. But that was my only note on this one. And make sure that if it is amended, that it's recorded, because it seems more and more often people are not recording their orders of conditions, and then we can't get a certificate of compliance done.
No, a good comment. So, my thought is this is if it's existing land that's been disturbed, and we're maintaining an existing feature, that's one thing. This is basically a new structure on the lot in this area. And I don't disagree, it's minor in nature, but it's a new design element, a new structure. It wasn't anticipated on the original order of conditions. I guess the question raised by me is, what impact does this actually have? Or does it actually reduce some grades and runoff going towards the resource? Do we have a topography map?
I don't have it.
Okay.
Well, it
It's
shows the.
Do you see the lines?
grades.
Where do you get the lines? It's like so small, you can't read them.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
It is bringing in fill and raising the grades.
Yeah.
And it is extending closer to the wetland line. So technically, this is not, I agree with you, Bob, it's a new design with new work in the buffer zone. And this is not what a modification was intended to address, regardless of whether we would issue different conditions.
Okay, TJ, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I don't have any thoughts other than which is technically correct to do. I don't think it's a big to do. I don't have a problem with approving it either way, but I do think we should do the technically right thing to do here, so we set precedent and we stick with doing it the right way.
Okay, Pete, I'm going to circle back to you because you've been able to glean all the wisdom of your fellow members.
I truly do enjoy conversations. So there are grading changes. There will be a structure. If there's going to be a structure, then we're going to have some sort of plan to maintain the structure, which would then be some sort of a condition, I would guess. And if that's the case, that we're going to be doing modification, we're going to have conditions. Based on what Diane said, I think it kind of, and what Mary said, I think it kind of follows out of just a straight modification. So that's kind of my thought now.
Okay, so if I'm,
I'm sorry. Is there
yeah, go
okay?
ahead. No,
I just
yeah, go
have
ahead,
one
sorry.
comment. Is
Yeah.
it any different if we don't do the structure? The reason for the retaining wall was just not to grade further into the buffer zone, but I mean, I don't even know if we would have to do that much more, but I'm happy to not put the retaining wall there because bringing in boulders versus just bringing in some more dirt and gradually grading it more towards the wetland is fine by us. I just wanted to minimize the area of disturbance.
So I think the sense of the commission and members, please chime in if I'm incorrect, is that the addition of a new wall requires an amendment to the order of conditions and not a minor modification. If you want to withdraw this and just finish it according to the original order conditions that were issued, I think unless you're going to make some other substantial change.
Well, we would, I mean, in order to bring the grade up and build the house how we want, we do have to bring in more fill and raise the grades. So I guess my thing was we could modify this plan to just, gradually grade this even further past this wall area. So because if you see this contour line is 14. So probably from here to get it down to 14, we would just have to bring in some fill here to just gradually have that so that we have a good 2-to-1 kind of grade there. But
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would glean from this is if you vary from the order of conditions approved, you need to come back for an amendment. If you were making a real minor change and not adding a new feature, a minor modification would probably be appropriate. So
would the grading be if we remove the wall and just did it with grading, would that be a minor modification then in your view?
I think if you're going to vary from the original plan that was approved, is this the original plan that's been approved with the addition of the proposed wall?
Yes. The original plan that was approved is the one I had up on screen earlier, and I can zoom in to this one.
Okay.
So this is the plan that was approved.
Is the
So-
building footprint the same?
Building footprint's exactly the same. Yeah, I mean, this is the same building because we've put the building into the, I think the setbacks that were approved within the buffer follow where we are within the buffer with the building. But yes, this was our building footprint placed on, this was our building footprint placed on the approved plan.
Okay. Mary, any further comments on this one?
Yes, just that, if you were, a minor modification might be if you were going to be adding on to the other side of the house or changing the driveway configuration slightly to accommodate a different turning radius or something like that, that is truly minor. When you're changing your site plan to show bringing in fill and grading that hasn't been approved, and you're working closer to the resource than was approved, I like the idea of a retaining wall. I think that's a good plan, and I would like to see this as an amended order of condition. And I don't think that the commission would object to it. I just think that it needs to go through the proper channels. So,
Thank you, Mary. Mary, I think that's the consensus of the commission. I'm going to go around one more time. Pete?
No, nothing new to add. Thanks.
Okay. TJ, you?
Nothing new to add, but just to clarify for the applicant that either bringing in fill or putting in the retaining wall would require an amendment, not a, either way, it would be an amendment. Okay.
Okay, Diane, any further questions on this?
No,
So I guess the question comes, does the applicant want to withdraw this application?
You tell me. I guess I have to.
Well, you know what, I think we're not going to, the consensus is we're not going to consider it as a minor modification. So it would either, you'd either need to follow the existing order of conditions or bring it back as an amendment. And
Right.
I think the board sounds positive on what you're doing. It's just the mechanism which you're doing it is
Okay.
the only issue.
So if I do have to make an amendment, would the board appreciate it being the wall or just done with grading? Does anyone have an opinion on that?
I like the wall. I think it is a
Yeah, I
creates a
agree.
good boundary from the work.
Okay. Okay, so we'll keep it as is then. All right.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
thank you.
So. All right, now we're back to Middle Road. So it's DEP file number 0501401. Middle Road to vote on an order of conditions, special conditions for the Governor's Academy for work to construct a walking path to provide access to the new Alphon Science Building. Sam, can you bring us up to speed on this and where we stand on this?
Can't hear me, can you? So at our last meeting, we voted to close the public hearing for this. This is for the walkway project to access the new science building. So today we just need to vote, and I believe at the last meeting we voted to issue the order of conditions. We just need to vote on the special conditions. But just to keep everything all together, I think we should vote to issue the order conditions again.
Yeah, I think we closed the public hearing
Yeah,
pending discussion on, final review of the conditions.
yep. So we do have, there was an original draft of the special conditions that I added to the Dropbox. I sent that off to Team TGA to review. They got back some comments to me today. I started working on kind of adding what I could in, and making some notes of what kind of needed some input from you guys. So I have an amended draft version as well as their comments that I can bring up so we can take a look at those. Make sure I get the right one. So this was, I believe, we're in the right one. This is the original draft special conditions. These are the comments that were returned. Basically everything that's highlighted in green, I already made some adjustments to the amended draft. The stuff that's in yellow, I needed some input on. And then this one highlighted in orange as well. Let's see if we can bring up the right ones. That's the one. All right. So I changed condition 27 to kind of incorporate the information about equipment in the wetland replication area. When we discussed this in the hearing, the applicants believed that they aren't going to need to go into the wetland area to do that replication. If you guys recall, the replication area is kind of a little upland island in the middle of the wetlands, which was believed to be historic fill. So they didn't think that they were going to need to go into the wetlands, but if in fact they do need to, I added this information down at the end of it to note basically that, you know, what kind of mats they were going to use, and to note that installation would need to be subject to inspection before they commence any work further on that.
Can I interject before we go on?
Yes.
Is that okay, Bob?
No, certainly, Mary.
Just, you know, maybe just that they also provide a restoration plan for after they take the mats or the equipment out. A restoration plan for approval by the commission, maybe. Or the commission's agent, whichever is appropriate.
Adjust that later if we need to. Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a more of a procedural thing. If we're working on the actual conditions, I'm sure you've seen the DEP came back. The fact that our meeting was closed on this matter, does that mean we just don't pay attention to the DEP suggestions that they gave, or do we have to still pay attention to them? Like when we're crafting the order of conditions.
So it's not part of the public hearing. So that the public hearing part is closed, but we can deliberate on, and we have 21 days from the close of the public hearing
to
to issue our conditions, and we can discuss those conditions at a public meeting.
Okay, did anyone look at them? I mean, they kind of went on for a while.
Oh, yes, they did. I didn't even know that there were comments.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Oh, boy.
they went on for a little while.
Oh, DEP had comments on this after our hearing?
Yeah,
Yeah, can you guys
and
see
didn't
that?
we kind of talk about that a little bit, that we were waiting on something from DEP, and I forget if it was this one or not, to be honest.
Oh, okay. What about-
I mean, they usually once they've issued a file number, they issue comments at the same time. I don't know why they wait so long to issue comments.
So
So
in
it
that
seems like the,
case, there are a couple of options. One is we can just go ahead and issue our conditions, then file it, and then DEP can intervene if they choose to. The other is that we can allow the applicant to reopen the public hearing to address these issues if they choose to.
I mean, my fear was if we go and do this and
It will take
just
longer.
don't do what they're being asked, then we're gonna be back here many,
Yeah.
many weeks from now. Whereas if they want to do something now, we can kind of be done
Yeah,
with
and
it.
they're asking for these things. They're not requirements, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 feet high. If there's, especially if they can demonstrate that vegetation can continue to grow underneath this. So,
And it seemed like it would because it's all
yeah,
kind of see-through and all that.
Right.
So I didn't have a huge problem with it. It was just the fact that they're there and just we had
There-
closed our meeting or hearing on it. So
there
I
was
didn't
a
know if we
plant
should
list too, yeah, I think we had
incorporate it or not.
a planting plan. There were
What?
4 plants or something.
why don't we ask Mark what his thoughts are? Is he aware of the technical comments that were just recently filed on this?
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission and Sam. I was frankly not aware of these at all. And I would not typically 2 weeks after a public hearing, go back and check the DEP website to see if there was any comments 2 weeks after the fact. This is very unusual, frankly. So, and yeah, the day before the hearing or the day of, there was nothing there other than the file number. So this is very unusual. Now, my experience with this elevating it as high as it is wide has typically been applicable to things like salt marshes. I wasn't aware that they had this kind of standard now for going over, inland wetlands as well. And it's pretty restrictive. And I think this really changes the entire character of it, especially if we had a solid decking. I absolutely could agree with the concern, but as you've already mentioned tonight, we were pretty determined to find a grading that would have a pretty significant open area that also met ADA requirements, so that we would be allowing a lot of light through. And it's frankly, if anybody that's been out there and looked at that wetland, it's pretty shaded in there to begin with. I'm not aware of that getting a whole lot of sun in there to begin with, but anyway, it's
If I could hop in and offer a solution.
Yeah, Mary,
Hey,
Mary,
Bob?
if you would, please,
Yeah.
Mary.
So one way we can handle this is by issuing findings as part of our order. And we can address these technical comments specifically in our findings to say why we think that the plan is acceptable. For example, that, the specific conditions at the site and the type of vegetation that are growing there, and the fact that the decking is a mesh decking essentially will allow adequate light penetration. So we don't feel there's going to be an impact to vegetation. And that a replication plan was provided, native plants were specified. And hopefully, you create a finding section right before your special conditions and describe why you've approved the project and why it meets the standards with specific attention to those comments. And hopefully that will satisfy DEP when they get the order of conditions. Findings are often issued for, large projects, complicated projects, but we don't typically need them for simple projects.
Mary, have you had experience with this type of comment being applied to other inland boardwalk
For
type
board-
situations?
Yes, they're getting fussy about
Okay,
boardwalks in particular, but you have met the criteria for boardwalks in this case, and where it is such a tiny amount of replication that's needed. I think that the comments are a little bit overkill, so I'm hoping in maybe Sam and I can together craft
okay.
a set of just a paragraph on findings that would be acceptable.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Mary, I think that's a great idea. What impact would that have on our 21-day period? Would the applicant need to toll that for us? Because it's going to sound like it's going to take. It
Yeah,
seems that
if they're
seems-
agreeing, if they agree to allow us, an extra week or 2 weeks or whatever it's going to be over the 21 days to craft that, or we can circulate that paragraph among the board members, and you can get back to Sam individually, whether you think it's okay, and if it's okay, she can send it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. If
Bob?
you're comfortable with that, Diane?
Yeah, Diane, what's your thoughts?
No, just be aware if you're crafting that, I mean, it seems pretty, where it's saying if the boardwalk can't be elevated, then impacts from shading must be included in the calculation, which will significantly increase the amount of replication that would be needed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if we make the finding that it's 65%, the sun can get through or whatever, I think it was 65 or something. I guess if that's in the finding, they might excuse that, but it could also just be aware that if
Yeah.
you have to include that as part of the shading, then that's basically a large portion of the walkway, right?
I mean, I would almost go back to Mary's original thought, which is we've closed the public hearing. We are satisfied that the submittal meets all the standards and approve it accordingly with our usual conditions. And then if the department feels they want to intervene, that certainly they're right. It's so untimely. It's not really fair to the applicant or even the commission to get technical comments this late in the project. But that's just my thoughts. So let's go around. TJ, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, just if we're going to just say that it meets the standard and we're okay with it, that's one thing. But if we're going to take care of it within the findings, I think we should address their last comment about the lack of narrative on the stormwater management. Or will that come into play with the boardwalk?
Where that, if I may, where that's going to come into play, frankly, is with the planning board.
Right.
And they're having a peer review done.
Okay.
And speaking for Governors Academy, I don't think we have an issue with, giving you another week or whatever is appropriate, because we don't even have our public hearing until April 19th with the planning board anyway, so.
Well, the problem is we can't actually circulate a document to all the members and then report individually. That would wind up circumventing.
I guess so, yeah.
Can I just throw
Yeah,
something out there real quick?
Certainly, Sam.
So the 21-day time period that we have is 21 business days, which
10 or less is business days, 10 or more is
I thought
calendar
it was
days.
21 business days. Okay,
Yeah,
so
no, it's
never mind then.
calendar days.
So I was gonna say, if it was business days, we have until the
Yeah.
20th to finish this.
So,
Hmm.
so Mark, our next meeting is April 18th. And the 21 days is up on April 20th. Sam, is that what you just said?
No, if it's calendar days, then the 21 days is next Tuesday.
Okay. So I guess the question is, does governors want to continue this matter while we hash out findings till the April 18th meeting? Or do they want us to proceed with a vote on the order of conditions when we close the public hearing?
Before I ask Tom and Wendy to weigh in on that, what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is go through the other comments that we had and at least try to get those out of the way tonight.
Okay,
And before continuing or whatever. And, but that said, Tom, Wendy, how do you feel about, this discussion about the finding and whatnot? Do we try to push it through tonight and then see what happens? Or do we? I think we want to clearly give time to Sam and Mary to draft a finding. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think realistically, we're going to be looking at the 18th anyway, but
That seems reasonable to me. I think there's enough on the table that an extra week might be sufficient. So I don't have a problem with that at all. And Wendy, do you feel differently or?
No, I agree with that.
I think it'll make your case easier down the road with DEP if we address it now. So, versus having them intervene, and that'll become a 60-day process.
yeah, I don't want to push this through, like rush it through and then regret it later. Yep.
If they do take 2 weeks, if we do have 2 additional weeks before issuing the order, they could also submit this information to DEP and respond directly to the comments. So either way.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how we would respond to the stormwater management comment, looking at that, so.
So I think Mark's suggestion, why don't we go over the conditions that we're controlling now, and then circle back on what we want to do for findings.
And I think one of your conditions actually speaks to stormwater. So why don't let's continue on here and talk about that more when we get to that one.
Okay, Sam, why don't you plow forward?
All right, so we went over number 27, number 30. So the question was, does this condition preclude the use of red overlay to show as-built conditions? So I'm assuming that's in reference to 30C.
Yeah, what it says, Sam, is that, right there, the last line, the as-built may not be the originally submitted plan with changes highlighted and explained. What we often do is put in red on the approved plan what the as-built condition is, so you can see very easily and quickly how it might deviate from the approved plan. So it seemed like that approach would not be possible with the way number 30C was written.
So, and Mary, you can probably clarify this a little bit more, but the way that I kind of read, the way that I interpret that is that like somebody couldn't just submit the proposed plan and then like draw over it in red pen, basically, like have an applicant instead of the engineer go over and just like highlight things that changed unofficially.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a stamped plan.
Right.
So as long as it's a stamped as-built plan, you can do it whatever way you want, I would think. Yeah.
Okay.
So we are all set with that. 32, I did change that to add this little bit at the end. Everybody's okay with that.
Can you slide it over? I can't read.
And I can't read it either.
Which
In the
which
area
way?
with 2 to 1 slope, and then our pictures are in the way there. Okay, there you go.
Oh, take the pictures out.
You
That
take-
that helps.
Yeah, I think we're fine with the way that's written, number 32 now.
Pretty good. All right. Then we had 35. No, I can't see the. All right. So the comment on that was an initial written report and one every 30 days during construction seems unreasonable given the relatively small size and complexity of this project. So 35, that's like a standard for everything. And the 30 days is, you know, as long as the ground, basically as long as the ground remains unstable. So, I mean, are you anticipating that construction is going to be completed before 30 days is up?
Quite possibly. But I think frankly, the bigger concern relative to that was related to number 43 about the invasive species. Was that 45? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Where the heck is it? Yes, 43. So, yeah, I think a lot of these are, you know, kind of in the same discussion, like 42.
Yeah.
You know, we need to talk about. And but if you know what, I think we were a little bit more worried about having to do a you know, a inventory for invasive species every month as opposed to just a progress report. So maybe Wendy, Tom, you could, you know, speak to 35, I guess a little bit. It's if that's your standard, then that's okay. And maybe we, like you said, we might just be issuing a single report.
Yeah, I think we can, I think 35 is reasonable. It's not something we've done on other projects, so it seemed new and you know, another task to complete. If it's as simple as an email, if we can submit it via email, it's just a update on, you know, where.
It doesn't have to be like a formal, you know, that Mark comes out and does an inspection every 30 days and, you know, it can, and that actually, there was another comment on something else about whether it would be acceptable. Yeah, number 50F, if a TJ employee is acceptable to do things like that. And say, as long as it's somebody who has a decent idea of what's going on and they understand what to be looking for.
That makes sense. Yeah, if Wendy or I could submit the report, Mark didn't have to come out and read it, that would be, I think, fine for us. So we can definitely do 35 and leave it as is.
And then 39, I did change the reference in that, so that should be all set. 42. Clarify the term properly supervised. Is this full-time resident engineering? Would this be satisfied by a qualified TGA employee?
The concern with that, Sam, is that we technically, for liability purposes, do not supervise construction.
Right.
We you know, we are not responsible for means and methods. It's so that word always makes me twitch a little bit.
All right.
And then it wasn't clear, like properly supervised, what does that actually mean? You know, like, and resident engineering is a term, like you basically have an engineer there from, you know, 8 to 4, 8 to 5 every day, just keeping an eye on construction.
Yeah, and I mean, most projects, I don't know of any projects that have their engineer. I mean, maybe aside from the science building construction, because that's big, and I'm sure that Consigli probably has some engineers that work there that are out there all the time.
Yeah, but even on that project, their engineering staff isn't on site daily.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
So I
Sam,
think that's-
let me make a suggestion. Governors probably has a director of facilities who oversees their plant and operations.
That's me.
Raise your hand, Tom.
That's
Okay.
me. I'm here. So
And why don't we just make reference to the director of facilities, and that it would seem that that's kind of, he's the catch-all of all the grief that goes on the campus anyway, so might as well just add to it.
I would just say that the wetland replication should probably be, you know, at least consulted, or have someone stop by at some point when you're doing it, even if it's tiny. And I can't imagine it's going to present a problem, but
Yeah, that's in the notes on the plan, Mary.
yeah,
And-
exactly. They'll be by. So I think it was DeRosa in this case.
Hmm.
So
And there's gonna have to be periodical inspections
Yeah.
by the engineer preparing the as-built anyway. To
Yeah.
be able to reference that.
And Mr. Chairman, I would call that periodic observations, not inspections.
Tom, I feel like your title is longer than that.
No, that's
That's good.
yeah,
All right.
perfect. Thank you.
All right. So are we good with that one?
Yes.
All right. And then next is 43. So this is the invasive species one.
And I think, Mark, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong. We understand the intent of this, but it's an area that's pretty devoid of much vegetation, and what is there, there's definitely some invasives there already. We're happy to inspect for additional invasives that are not, that are brought in from outside, from off-site during construction. We won't be bringing any soil in other than the wetland specific soil that is noted on the plan. Wendy is very knowledgeable about invasives and biology, and I think we could, if you're comfortable with us doing it internally, we can certainly include that in our in our report, in our monthly report.
That seems fine to me. It's more a concern at the bridge, not at the boardwalk, not the rest of because your project area is going to be, it's going to be maintained as a walkway. So it's really just at the boardwalk that this applies, and specifically the replication area, which is going to be pretty easy to maintain since it's so small.
So do we need to change anything in this one?
I mean, I would say you just, twice annually or something like that until a certificate of compliance is issued instead of monthly. Does that help?
I think one thought also was that it should be consistent with the replication plan that was submitted.
Which I don't have handy, so I don't know what that says.
Well, I think it called for monitoring of 2 growing seasons and whatnot. So that would include monitoring for invasives, of course.
So maybe it just needs to reference the monitoring described in the wetland replication plan.
And that calls, a report will have to go back to the commission relative to that. You could just say replication areas shall be monitored for invasive species as part of the replication area process or something.
I think that covers it pretty well.
Good with that one? All right. And then 45. So this was a question. What is meant by natural areas? It is likely that materials and equipment would be stored along the pathway during construction, especially in the interior section. Could acceptable areas for storage be identified on the plan as limit of work or discussed and approved in the pre-activity meeting? And again, open to interpretation. My kind of understanding of natural areas was like, in this case would be like the delineated wetlands. So maybe don't park your dump truck in the wetland area. So keep it like on the pavement, or at least, just off roadside.
We can't stockpile crushed rock in the wetland?
Probably not.
Yeah.
So do we need any revisions on this one?
How about change natural areas to resource areas?
Just wetlands and buffer zones. That's fine. Yeah.
Although the buffer zones incorporate most of the work area, if not all. Middle Road is in a buffer zone, so it's
right. But that's in your work, in your that are not part of your scope of work. So you've got approval to work in portions of the buffer zone. So you just have to stay within that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, resource areas within the designated work area that are not, yeah, see, it's. I think what the concern was that, say, as we're going along building the pathway, stone part, there might be some materials like temporarily stored on the sides of the path or something like that as they're going, you know, and there was some concern that everything will have to be hauled out every single night. You know, we might be overthinking these a bit, but
Yeah, I think you just need to put it in keep within your work area, because you have a clearing area, right?
Right.
That you can
Yep.
store things in. So as long as you stay within the work area that you've designated.
Did we want to say instead resource areas outside the limit of work?
No, I mean, that actually looks fine, just the way it is to me, guys. I mean,
I think you just have to say resource areas and buffer zones within the designated work area, or outside resource areas and buffer zones not within the designated work area shall not be used.
right. I like that.
That works.
And then the next one was 50D. So this is
Sam, I don't think you finished that thought on 45. Sorry.
I was reading it as it was scrolling.
sorry.
Stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't-
Shall resource areas and buffer zones not within the designated work area shall not be,
Not part.
yeah, or however that works. We got to get the shall not be in there somewhere.
Resource areas and buffer zones.
Yeah, so I think that's
So just take out the phrase before it that are not part of the scope of work. Just take that part out.
Yeah,
There you
that's,
go. There you go.
Okay.
I think that did it.
All right.
I think.
all right.
Thank you.
And then the erosion control. So this was erosion control barriers are proposed within 25 feet of wetlands. Should this be included or clarified in the condition? So the thing that I noted about that is that it states without written permission, which by getting the approval and having the approved plan where we know where the erosion control is, that's your written permission that you can
Okay.
have stuff within 25 feet. You good with that?
Yep.
That
Or
makes
you could
sense.
just say, unless otherwise shown on the approved plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that even better.
So.
Or as shown on the approved plan. Yeah, you already have that in there.
You have it in there.
Yeah, you get.
All right, and then site inspection requirements, would an academy employee be appropriate given the engineer would not always be on site? So that's in. Yeah, in here. So again, I would say, yeah, an employee would be totally fine as long as they're aware of what to look for. You know, just to make sure that they know to check make sure that all of the erosion controls are still intact and haven't been knocked down or ripped apart or anything.
Tom and Wendy have a lot of experience with that. We also, you know, that could be also discussed at the pre-construction meeting.
Yeah. All right. So next is 54. And that was C comment on condition 45. So 54 is all fill stumps, brush logs, rubbish, construction debris, excavated materials, construction equipment and vehicles and construction materials, if permitted to be stored on site, shall be stored in a designated location approved by the NCC. Which I think we kind of covered that for the most part. Yes.
Yeah.
So could that be decided during the pre-construction meeting?
Yes.
I think the overall concern was we don't want to have all these additional approvals once the project starts, so.
No, yeah, or its agent you can add at the end there. How's that?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
And then 56 perimeter drains are not included, and I did take that out.
Okay, here's the one I mentioned that related to stormwater. And maybe relative to the DEP comment.
Yeah.
And it basically says that there shall be no direct discharge. I'm reading the original condition because I can only see half of this one, but there shall be no direct discharge of stormwater runoff into streams or other wetland resource areas. Runoff from the site, natural or man-made, shall be directed overland to maximize groundwater recharge and cleansing of the runoff through contact with natural soils and vegetation. Perfect. I think that says it all, and that's definitely our intent. And without having to construct, stormwater basins and altering more natural areas to, create stormwater basins. So that we don't feel are really needed. So, or warranted. So I think that addresses, could be used as part of the, the findings with the DEP. And then obviously we have to satisfy the planning board as well. So who knows what's going to shake out of that. I'm hoping their peer reviewer sees it as we do.
Good with that? All right. And then get down to number 60. So the comment was, we'll want to remove fallen trees and shrubby vegetation resulting from the work or in the way of construction of the raised boardwalk replication area. Can this condition be modified to allow this? So again, we have the language with except as approved, which would have been covered under, having the plan approved.
Would it be appropriate there again to say the NCC or its agent? I mean, basically, as they're going in clearing, for the pathway and everything, there's going to be some vegetation removal, some tree, we work through the major trees, but there might be some smaller ones, and they just don't want to leave that, down material all over the place. And then I think.
Yeah, you just need to move except as approved by to the end of that sentence, I think. Doesn't make sense where it is.
Okay.
No, just accept as approved by NCC or its agent, put that at the end. Yeah.
This is kind of fun, actually. I appreciate this opportunity.
As shown, not and shown.
I must say, Sam, you're very good under pressure here, typing away here. Very impressed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm a dispatcher too, so I have to get used to typing very, very quickly as people are shouting emergencies at me.
Wow. I didn't know that, Sam. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. All right. Are we good with this one?
Other than those shown on the approved plan, I can't, my eyes are going crossed.
Does that help at all?
Oh, gosh, right.
I think it looks okay.
Okay. Good.
All right. Next is 62. So for this one, the comment was having all stationary fuel equipment be outside the buffer zone is not practical. Similar, middle roads in the buffer zone and everything. So I just added the highlighted note: equipment may be stored on paved areas, or I guess we could say stored and fueled on paved areas within the buffer zone. Equipment may not be stored on equipment not being stored on paved areas shall be located in containment area.
Okay, but this relates to, I think you skipped over 61, Sam, but on 62, this relates to stationary equipment. So yeah, I guess this is okay. The one thing that Tom and Wendy were concerned about is that if like the excavator, with the excavator that's working in the for the wetland replication, would that have to be on some kind of pad or something like this? And there's going to be equipment working in the area that it has fuel in it. So
It's not being stored though. Just
Right.
Referring to just storage.
right.
You're gonna walk the equipment out, Mark, at night
Yeah.
to the edge of the road. You're not gonna leave it in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
But it does say stored or operated within the resource area or buffer zone.
Or fuel storage and refueling can't be in the buffer zone.
Well, Tom is right. Pumps,
Yeah.
generators, or other stationary equipment containing fuel, blah, 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 shall not be stored or operated in the resource area or buffer zone.
So just take out operated then.
Yeah, in the specific cases, you think air compressor for the pin piers or generator for power.
Is buffer zone still in there? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. See, that's a concern, like even Middle Road's in the buffer zone. So it's like they couldn't even have this equipment on Middle Road.
Right, so that was why I
Without
add,
approval of the
That's
NCC
a-
or its agent.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and that was why I added this part that it can be stored and fueled on paved areas.
All right.
And just add end agent.
Yep.
Um,
Right there. Yep.
Or its agent, yeah.
Tom, Wendy, are you okay with this now or?
I am.
Okay.
So that means that we'd have to have impervious containment areas for generators and that kind of thing in the interior in the buffer zone.
If it's stored.
I mean, I think the main concern, team, is the refueling operation,
Right.
more so than anything else.
I do get the concern about storing as well, because you see construction sites all the time where stuff is leaking onto the ground or whatever. So, I mean, I
You
get
just need to
it.
put it on a pad. If it's equipment storage
Yes.
in the buffer zone, it just needs to be on some
Yep.
kind of containment pad.
Right. That makes sense.
All set?
All right. What did we? Yeah, number 61, again, back to that one. Any equipment, fuel storage, refueling, and lubrication operations shall be situated in an upland area outside the buffer zone. So I think Tom and Wendy were concerned about having to move equipment all the way out of the buffer zone to, if you had a small generator or something, just to refuel it or to, I don't know. There's a little concern about that, just logistically during construction.
Yeah, but guys, with all due respect, our concern is the resource, not the ease
Right.
of construction. So
Yeah, I understand.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds on some of these requirements on containment of fuels and stuff like that.
Okay,
I'm not comfortable with much more tweaking with that.
okay.
Uh,
All right. Why don't we move on to 63?
All right, so our two questions for this one, asking for clarification of offsite. The academy has a stockpile area for landscaping materials that are approved under the current buffer zone management plan. May wish to use these for disposal on a temporary or permanent basis. I did add this language in here, noting that removed materials may be disposed of or stored at designated areas on the Governors Academy campus, which are currently used for such disposal or storage.
Perfect.
And then what kinds of records are intended for the destination of materials disposed off-site? Contractors use typically charged by the load, and the only records received are the invoices which don't specify material or weight.
So wouldn't it be the only thing we want to track would be if they have an invasive species that they're hauling off to make sure we have a record of where it's being disposed of properly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
So the Japanese knotweed, we had that at the police station project and
Yeah, just tell us where you're putting the stuff, that's all. You know,
Mm.
It doesn't have to be you don't have to have it.
Yeah, I think the concern was that, every single load that went out.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's happened in the past, but since I've been here, we haven't had to ask anyone where they bring their stuff before.
If you want to just specifically mention invasive species, that's totally fine.
yeah, I think that's the major concern, that we're not disposing of
Spreading it.
an invasive species in an improper way that just perpetuates the problem.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. 65 was about underground fuel storage, and I did remove that. 67, which is now 66, notes that snow clearing on the boardwalk will be required. And where did that go?
What it used to say is snow shall not be plowed into the resource area
Did I just take the whole thing out? I think I might have just taken the whole thing out.
or adjacent salt marsh areas, which are not applicable. But the concern was that, they're going to be shoveling the boardwalk over the wetland. They're going to be, using a, one of the, power brushes, snow brushes. And governors just wanted to make sure that it would be okay for them to use that equipment.
Are they gonna be salting the walkway?
No,
Then it's.
absolutely no
concerned.
need for it.
So then it doesn't really matter, because that's really intended to address, primarily salt issues, some sediment, but there's not gonna be sediment on the boardwalk, so that's not a concern there.
Oh yeah, I've seen some terrible stuff in snow piles, so I get it.
All right. And then the last note was whether there should be a condition requiring review and approval of the wetland replication plans.
In where we were coming from on that is that
It didn't
we
specify. Yeah.
we were kind of generic on the plan, didn't want to call for any particular species, and certainly looking for input from Sam and Mary, et cetera. And I know that Martha, in planning, wanted to know what was going to be planted for some, she was very, she asked about it a couple times actually. So, we were thinking low bush.
Just a plant list, yeah, rather than saying a plant, replication plan, it's gonna sound to DEP like they should have provided something that they didn't provide as part of their application, so just say, the final planting list in the replication area is subject to final approval by the NCC or its agent.
That sounds great.
I'll be separate.
I think we're going to use 2 low bush blueberries and 2 Japanese knotweeds. I'm kidding.
You with the conservation jokes.
Throw some bittersweet in there just for fun too.
Oh, okay. We'll use that instead of low bush blueberry.
Oh, I like it. I like a little splash of red here and there. All right. So are we good with everything up to this point? And then we'll revisit on the 18th. With as far as the comments from DEP go.
Sure.
Okay, let's go around to the members on where we're at on the special conditions. Mary, are you comfortable with the special conditions that we just reviewed?
Yeah, I'd like to reread them once when you make these
Yeah.
changes, just to make sure that it
The
makes sense.
grammatically,
But
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
otherwise, I'm generally in
Yeah,
agreement.
in general terms, that you're okay.
Yep.
Pete, how about yourself? Any?
I'm comfortable and I'm very glad that Mark enjoyed this experience.
TJ,
I'm all set.
okay, Diane,
I'm good.
any further comments? And I'm comfortable with that too. So,
And all of those were saved live in the Dropbox, so they should be available already for everybody.
Okay, thanks.
okay, so what do we need from the applicant? So that, do we need anything in writing from them before the expiration of the 21 days? Extending the period to the 18th?
If one of you can send me an email just noting that you are aware that the order conditions is not going to be issued within the 21-day time limit and you're waiving that requirement pending further discussion of the conditions.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to leave it open indefinitely like that, but I think saying that it, extending it
Till
to
the next meeting.
Yeah,
18th is appropriate. Yep.
yep.
And you probably will want to just discuss this with your wetland consultant, just to get their advice on how they suggest handling it, either addressing the comments directly with DEP or having us do it through findings. Because
Okay.
Okay.
But Diane's hand is up.
Diane,
Something very attorney-like to
I
say.
just had a question as far as like when we're doing findings and everything to sort of address comments that DEP has made. Haven't we had conversations in the past about us like not doing the job of the owner to kind of get things through? So I just think, it's really, in a way, it might be a good situation if they responded directly to DEP, because then we're going to find ourselves in these situations where we're trying to craft things. I mean, maybe that's our job, but just, is it up to us to get this through, or?
no, I think you brought up a very good point, Diane. It's unusual that the technical comments came in 2 weeks later.
But we have the ability to issue findings no matter what, whether we do this or not, so we can just be more descriptive of why we made the decision that we did.
Yeah.
Which could have the benefit of helping them, that's all. But yes, I agree, it's preferred if they do it themselves and address the comments directly.
Okay, so do we need a vote or anything to continue this matter to the 18th, or just put it on the agenda?
I don't think we necessarily need to vote on it.
Yeah. Okay,
But as long as, unless anybody has any objections to doing so, we can continue the discussion to.
I would prefer if the applicant requests a continuation of this matter to the 18th.
We can do that. too.
Okay, because we can vote on this right now with the conditions that have been issued. Or they're asking us to hold off to consider findings. So it's at their request that they're extending the time frame. I think it should just be clearly.
So requested,
So
Mr.
Marla.
Chairman.
Okay. All right, well, any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next matter. All right, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night. See you on the
Thank
18th.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Sam, great job on that. Man, oh man, I'm with Mary. My eyes were crossing trying to read it, and I
Try
think
doing
the
that for
content,
11 hours a day.
the basic content is great. It's just going to be use your Grammarly app to clean things up. But all right, so where are we at here? Okay, so enforcement order, file number NCC 41820 Northern Boulevard. Administrative enforcement order issued for violation of a negative determination of applicability for second floor deck expansion and roof configuration of a roof line. Okay, we did receive attorney Doug Duchesne. Am I saying that correctly? Is Doug Duchesne on the line?
Duchesne, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. So Doug, why don't you start, and please be as time sensitive as you can. When you finish, we did have a communication come in late today from our town council. So we'll circle back on that once you've made your presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson, representing Jody and Amy Latimer. I just want to let the commission know that I actually did the original permitting with the Zoning Board of Appeals, so I am quite familiar with the site. The Latimers had called last week and asked if I could come in and help, resolve the current situation and work with the commission. I did send a letter to you. I'm sorry for the timeliness of it or the lack of timeliness, but I was just brought in last week and I had to get it done as quickly as I could. As I understand, the initial stop work order and the enforcement order were issued over concerns relating to potential zoning or violations of not the zoning, and therefore the 50% rule, and also that there was some disturbance of the dune and its vegetation. I do also understand that the building inspector has addressed the zoning question and the 50% rule. And so I'm here to discuss tonight the violation relating to the location of the dumpster and the stockpiling of some materials, which I understand did impact the dune. Fortunately, it appears that the any disturbance or of the dune or the grass appears to be minimal. I have been out and took a look myself. At that point, the dumpster had been removed and the material had been removed as well. So I guess there was some evidence of, a pressing of the grass, but I fortunately did not see any wholesale, major disturbance. So what my client has done, and it's reflected in my letter, is, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're proposing that that this issue get addressed through the enforcement order, which is, in my experience, typical way of handling, disturbance of a minimal nature. And so what we've proposed is that my client would take actions going forward to protect the dune. He's also made arrangements to provide more than adequate space for parking and material storage, so that the front of the site is now available for the dumpster and any materials that have come in. And he's made arrangements for parking at the next door neighbor's house for any vehicles. So we do believe we can prevent any further intrusions into the dune area. And again, we are proposing some significant fencing and other, protective barriers that the commission might want, so that we can keep the workers out of that area, ensure that nothing's put in those areas. We've also, at this point, we're at a juncture in the construction that we can do all of the remaining work through access from the front of the house, the driveway on the left, and the structure itself. So there should not be a need for anyone to go into that dune on the right or the dune in the back to finish this construction. So we're hoping that with with significant snow fence or other barriers that the commission might suggest, that we can take control of that and assure that no further problems would be done. With respect to the damage or the alteration that has occurred, we will certainly be willing to do any form of action with respect to fostering the rebound of the impacted vegetation. We suggested perhaps some monitoring along the way to make sure everything's going correct.
Hey, Doug, let me stop you there. Sam, can you put up Doug's letter? Do you have that available? Can you post that?
Yes, give me 1 second.
And Mr. Chairman, while you're doing that, quite frankly, I just got a couple more sentences, and then I'm happy to take questions or address the letter specifically. The final suggestion that I've made is that part of the enforcement order could require not only monitoring as we continue to work, but also a final inspection by the commission and its agent once the work is done. And at that point, the commission could make a more definitive determination whether any further action needs to be taken with respect to the affected dune grass. And, you know, if it turns out when the work's done and everything's cleaned up, that the commission feels that we have to be more proactive in addressing the dune grass, we could certainly be willing to provide, you know, a restoration plan or some other action in order to make sure that that's done. Currently, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, last thing I'd like to say is that we are hoping that we can address this this evening through you know, an enforcement order. Because as you know, the site is currently, the structure is currently wide open to the weather. And, you know, we've got some steel framing out there. So there's, you know, there's always safety concerns. We certainly wouldn't want anyone, kids or otherwise, messing with the structure. And we are concerned about the continued exposure to the weather and what it might do in terms of saturation of the materials and mold, you know, mold generation going forward. So we really are hoping that we can provide the commission enough assurances that we can get back to work and get this done, and you know, at the same time protect those resource areas. So I'm all ears at this point, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions the commission might have with respect to my letter.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Sam, can you, as I recall in the Dropbox, there was a draft enforcement order for our review.
The one that Doug did?
Yeah.
Yes. Anytime today.
What version of Word are you using, Sam? That
Believe it or not, it's actually pretty up to date.
and it looks like it's a
my
floppy, came off
computer
a
is
floppy disk.
My computer is just real slow, especially when I have a bunch of stuff. No, actually, you know what might help? Maybe not having this open usually helps a little bit. Well, there's the draft conditions.
Okay, so that was the kind of the addendum because none of it would fit. So,
All right, there we go.
okay. All right, Doug, why don't you walk us through this, and then I'm going to hold for questions from the members, and we'll see what we can do with this tonight.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So I essentially, I do have some experience in enforcement orders. I was the chairman of the Westford Conservation Commission for many, many years. So first of all, I addressed the extent and type of activity to make it clear what the basis of the violation was, that contractors working on the house entered into a dune area and placed building materials within a coastal resource area, potentially damaging existing vegetation. I probably should have also added, including a dumpster. With respect to the findings, I assume the board would find that the activity has been or is being conducted in an area subject to protection in violation of its negative determination of applicability. I filled in the Latimer's contact, and then I also checked off an other finding, and I apologize for the typo. It says, should say entrance of contractor into dune and placement of building materials. So again, just an additional finding in addition to the description of the violation. With respect to the order, one, we shall immediately cease and desist from all activity affecting the buffer zone. You know, we've done that. Not only that in that we have stopped all construction, but we have removed the dumpster, we've removed the material, and you know, we are going nowhere near the dune or its grass. The resource alteration resulting from said activity shall be corrected and the resource areas returned to their original condition. I have not proposed at this point a restoration plan, given the nature of the damage, the impact, and the fact that, you know, we should get the job done so that we can see if there, you know, what the final situation is out there. However, I have said, under the order part C, I've checked that the property owner shall take the following actions to prevent further violations. And that's where I went to the appendix there, the attachment. Interestingly enough, this form does not allow you to put very much in that space. So I decided to put it as an attachment. And so what we proposed is that prior to resumption of construction, we shall install and maintain temporary fencing, isolating the resource areas from all construction activities during the duration of the construction. And as I've said, we're in a position now where we can access the structure from the front and the driveway on the left. We won't have to, we can do everything else from the existing decks or the base of the structure. The respondent shall notify the conservation agent prior to installation of fencing to verify location, and upon further verification by the conservation agent of the location and the fact that the installation is done correctly, construction could resume. Within 30 days of completion of the construction, we'll contact the agent for a site visit to assess the condition of the resource area to determine if any further action by the commission is warranted. If the agent determines further monitoring of the resource area is required, we'll submit to the commission for its review and approval a written monitoring and reporting plan prepared by a professional, wetland professional with relevant technical experience, detailing the actions that we shall take to monitor the resource area. The respondent shall implement such monitoring and reporting upon receipt of written approval by the commission. If the commission determines a restoration plan is required to restore or replant the resource area, the respondent shall submit to the commission for its review and approval a written replanting plan prepared by a wetland professional with relevant technical experience, detailing the actions we shall take to restore the wetland resource area to prior condition, and we shall implement such actions upon a written approval of the commission. I do also want to mention that my client has hired a wetland consultant, well-known, experienced consultant here, to help us in the completion of any monitoring plans or replication plans, depending on what the commission requires when construction is completed. Other than that, I just filled in the administrative stuff on the enforcement order, but I would suggest that you can issue an enforcement order that will truly hold our feet to the fire and ensure no further impacts. And at the completion of construction, if the commission wants us to do anything further with respect to fostering that dune grass, either through monitoring or restoration, we're willing to do that, certainly. My client has accepted responsibility for what occurred and is committed to making sure that it is corrected.
Okay, thank you, Doug. So team, why don't I do this late this afternoon? We got a communication from town council, and Mary and I had sent off our comments on this matter, and as you recall at the last meeting, we continued this matter pending so we could reach out to town council and to conduct a site visit. And I will give you the short version, as it
Do you
says here.
want me to bring her letter up?
Yeah, I'm just going to read it. I'll just read the short answer is the Conservation Commission should amend their enforcement order to require the owners here to file a new RDA or NOI, and if the commission decides the current scope of work violated the WPA by altering the dune, order them to restore the dune. So that's what town council has sent back as they should do that. So why don't I stop there and why don't we go around to the committee? I just want to be, accurate on where we stand on this. Mary, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Bob. So I am in agreement with town council in this case, and I think I made that clear at the last meeting that these are two separate issues. We have an enforcement order to address a violation that's occurred, and we need a mechanism to approve further work that you propose that was not authorized. We can't authorize starting construction on the building because we don't have anything on file allowing that work to occur. And we can't condition an enforcement order to condition future work. We can only use it to compel work that is involved with restoring a violation. That includes putting in fencing, permanent fencing and anything like that. Those are conditions that are appropriately put in an order of conditions or a determination of applicability, but we can't add them to an enforcement order. And so I think that, in my opinion, we issue the enforcement order that, or we update or amend it to direct the applicant to restore any dune that has been damaged to date that commission members feel is appropriate if there's planting that's needed, and that we direct them to issue to file an RDA or an NOI for authorization of the new work, because right now they don't have anything permitting them to do that work. That's
Mr.
unfortunately.
Chairman, could I just ask a question of Mr. Emmer? Mary, are you suggesting that that the NOI or a new RDA would be to allow us to do the restoration work? Because we're not proposing any new or different construction work whatsoever. We're not proposing to impact or alter any dune or any resource area that we
Correct.
weren't, essentially allowed to do under the RDA. I really think we're here to address a potential violation.
Yeah, I understand your position, and I know that that's been discussed at previous meetings, and the RDA specifically was for removal of a roof and reconstruction of a portion of the second floor. This project is currently much more involved, and it's essentially new construction with many more potential impacts associated with that, for which you have offered special conditions, which don't presently exist at all for the site. And I don't think that we can add them in an enforcement order as a means of avoiding the permitting process, because
But we're not proposing any change.
Doug, listen, everybody, all
my take,
questions.
all the members can have their take on it, but this is
Yeah.
my take, and this is the opinion, because I did describe it in detail to the town council,
Yeah.
what the work that was requested as part of the RDA and what the work that is necessary now. And her response was simply what Bob said, that, we have to direct them to issue, to file some sort of filing to cover that work, because right now there isn't one.
Doug, just to be clear, all conversations go through the chair. There's no back and forth. So
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
hold your comments. I'll come back to you. I want to circulate this through the member because we all have different opinions of this one. So in fairness to everybody, Pete, where are you at? What's your thoughts on this?
So I would always follow guidance of town council. I think that that's appropriate, and that's why we have town council. So that's where I would stay with this.
Okay, thank you, Pete. TJ, what are you thinking of this one?
Well, it's certainly safe to follow town council, not that's why we have her. I'm comfortable with the enforcement order. I think Sam will monitor it quite regularly and to be there the whole time. But I'm okay either way.
Okay. Diane, what are you thinking?
I mean, I totally get what everyone is saying. I get it. We have the violation that needs to be restored. And then we have to see what happens moving forward and somehow control that. And we can't control it because it's never been brought before us to a certain extent. We did issue the negative, determination, but, the plans were there. We're not changing the footprint. I think it was a bit off the way it was presented. We did not know what was going to be, how they were going to get to the end product. But in the end, it's the same footprint. And my thought, just to kind of keep things going, would like Mary, I see what you're saying, that, and there's going to be these more potential impacts, but all of those impacts are going to be, if at all, on that dune, the same dune that we've already had the violation on. So if we craft the enforcement order that basically prohibits anything from being put on the dune, in effect, we're making sure that there will be no more impacts. No matter if they're rebuilding the house or changing the roof line, they're not going to be encroaching any further on what they've already encroached on. And I get that I wouldn't be looking at that to say, therefore, we're approving their building of the house again, because it would basically be getting to the same result, same footprint. They would not, be on the dune at all. Even if they submit the NOI or a new RDA, likely even if it was an RDA, we'd basically say, what additional impact would it have if we have an enforcement order in place that says absolutely nothing goes on the dune? Do we need to approve them rebuilding the house if there's an enforcement order based on a violation that says nothing's on the dune? Like, where is it said that we must further approve the construction of this house? Because it's going to look the same as the plan looks. And we did approve that, or we didn't approve it. We didn't put conditions on it. Well, other than don't put anything on the dune. But now we have the EO to deal with that. So that's sort of, I think just the EO kind of, in effect, does exactly the same thing. Then if we have them go through the whole process, it's just going to be weeks later. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we do the EO, absolutely nothing on the dune. And in effect, it's going to keep them off the dune. And that's all we'd be doing anyways. So I guess that's my comment.
I think, this board usually is 100%. I think if we went back and looked at every one of our votes over the last year, we're probably 99% unanimous in all our votes. So my position, I think, I look at this, that when the stop work order went into force, and both the building inspector and Sam are out there, I thought that was an appropriate action. But once the building inspector determined that there was no substantial modification, what had been approved, and the finished product is going to be exactly the same, I turned my focus to the resource, not so much the structure. We manage the resource, which is land. Building department and zoning manager structure, which is the dwelling. What I'm thinking, and again, it's it's a collaborative effort on this. I certainly, we have to do an enforcement. We need to amend the current enforcement order. I think many of the conditions that have been incorporated by council, I think it creates an open-ended safety net for the commission and for our agent to be able to monitor and request over a period of time, and certainly at the end of construction, it makes sense to look at that and to evaluate what impact has been done to the dune with where that the materials were placed, or if there was any further encroachment, intentionally, unintentionally, or whatever.
So.
Go ahead, Mary.
No, I just want to make 2 points. One is we should be clear that this is a violation of both the local bylaw and the state rules, and our enforcement order only addresses one right now. So we should make sure that it's modified to address both. Secondly, it needs to be filed with DEP. And
Mhm.
if you craft it in the way you're proposing to craft it, I think there's going to be an objection by DEP.
Yeah, no,
And they're taking that risk by not going the route of just withdrawing and
Yeah.
I mean, filing a new RDA. If that's the commission, if that's the way the commission votes and DEP decides that they think that this work is unauthorized, that they're going to continue to do under an enforcement order, then that's.
well,
risk
I
that they'll
mean,
take. They would have to
one,
do that.
one thing for sure is enforcement orders are appealable to Superior Court, not to DEP. That's the way the statute is written on that.
Enforcement orders. DEP
Are only-
will enforce and our own enforcement orders, they will take over an enforcement.
Yeah,
Local enforcement.
but the appeal is not to DEP, it's to Superior Court on enforcement.
There's no appeal for an enforcement order.
Well, actually, there is, Mary, when you read the form. It tells you right on it, right? So, but that being said, so the matter is we have an RDA that we have a question whether it covers the scope of this, regardless that the plan submitted shown all the work. And the rub is the description used is where the rub is, I think, for most of us. We all had a right to ask all the questions we wanted to. We had full plan set in front of us. And I think, shame on us, we kind of relied more on the written description rather than the plans before us. So it seems to me we got, in the past, we have considered amending an RDA. It was regarding a boardwalk over for an RDA we did on a boardwalk over for the Plum Island Station. And we talked about it then, and it wasn't the best approach. But I think that's a possible option to amend the current RDA and add a notation. If I can find what I was thinking here. That within the enforcement order, that any modifications, any further modifications of any kind would require the filing of a notice of intent and an immediate stop work order. So behind door number one is, do we want to consider amending the existing RDA and amending the enforcement order as been presented, or to a liking of our choosing, require that the applicant file a new RDA for the same project, or require them to file a notice of intent for this project. So see if I'm correct. We're talking the RDA. We're looking at more the RDA process than an NOI is. I mean, it's an option, and I should qualify. Town council's opinion is it's a should. It's not a must. It's not a shall. It says you should amend this, but so that's what I say. So I'm going to stop there. Doug, do you want to
If I
add
could,
your
Mr.
comments on
Chairman,
this, please?
and I'll be brief. I think we have to take a step back here, because what occurred with respect to the construction is that instead of rebuilding the first floor walls, they were going to be rebuilt, new windows, window holes put in, new doors, and they were going to be completely reconstructed. but rather because it turned out that the existing studs and the headers and the footers or whatever had severe damage, the builder made a decision that it was just going to be easier and quicker to just rebuild them. And again, we've admitted that we should have called the building inspector, and I think we wouldn't have had any issues with that. But with respect to a change of the work that would have any impact at all on the resource areas, that didn't happen. The fact that they stockpiled material and put the dumpster in the wrong place was in no way related to the change of the first floor walls. Rather, it was a very costly error on the part of the workers. So I don't see what a new RDA or what a new notice of intent would do, because we would be coming in saying, we just want to finish the work that we were previously allowed to do. And it really wouldn't be any different than the other RDA. Yet, by using the enforcement order, which I do believe town council said that the enforcement order could be used to require us to put in protections and or file, a restoration plan. So it seems to me that we can achieve everything everyone wants through the through the enforcement order modification. And if you want to require us to file a restoration plan, again, my client's committed to do that. But I'd also ask the commission, when you went out there, did I miss something? I did not see wholesale disturbance of the dune or the grass. Rather, I could see where material had been laid on the grass and it's pressed down. Hopefully it's going to rebound and go up. But the key here, folks, is that we need to get this building finished and buttoned up. And we can do that while at the same time providing you assurances through that enforcement order modification that we won't disturb anything else. And that we'll put up protections to prevent that from happening. And we won't access the building from that area. Again, by doing it that way, we can get back to work immediately. If the commission would like us to file a restoration plan now, rather than waiting till the project's done and doing a wholesale assessment, we're happy to do that. But I don't see why it does anyone any good, including the resource areas, and certainly not my client, to keep construction shut down for some number of weeks while we file, an RDA. Again, we need to get back to work. We need to get this done so that there's no chance of any intrusions going forward. So
Okay.
again, we're willing to work with you.
All right, Doug, we get it. So team, first, why don't we address the enforcement order? Because whatever we do with the enforcement order, we're going to include whether we're going to require an NOI, an RDA, or we're going to amend the existing RDA. So why don't let's pull up the enforcement order again and discuss that. And Pete, you look like you're ready to say something.
I do have I just need a clarification. The dumpster was put on the left side of the house. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So the dumpster, we've acknowledged that the dumpster was put in the wrong place. So now it's going to be put in the front of the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
no, Mr. Chairman, if I might, through you, sir, I believe it was always.
Doug, will you please let the man finish his,
Sorry.
raise your hand, you get a method there. Pete, continue.
So if the dumpster was in the wrong place, and if I remember, the question that I had was, what component of the left side of the house is now dune versus what used to be driveway? And does that section that is now dune need to be protected? And if it does need to be protected and fencing will be put up to protect it, how will there be access to the left side of the house for construction with regards to access to build that?
You know what, Pete, we had a site visit.
I know, and I'm very, very sorry that I didn't make that.
And basically the all four sides of the house, it's pretty obvious the whole left side of the house is a driveway.
Okay. Good. Then
It's,
you
yeah,
answered my
it's not
question.
in
Yep.
the front of the house is the driveway, and in the right side facing the house in the back are all decks. Where that, I think one of the points that, you know, we've been discussing is there's really no area to get on the resource that isn't already disturbed or already allowed by the RDA.
Okay.
The
You've answered my
dumpster,
question. Thank you.
you know, and in the dumpster, I do recall too that it was either Mr. Latimer or Perez. When we were talking about where they were going to put materials and park vehicles, I made the comment about in front of the house. And there was a reference that the driveway was on the left side of the house and that would be used for the dumpster. So team, let's do this. Let's knock off. Are we comfortable with the wording that has been proposed in the enforcement order that's been proposed? Is there anything we want to add to the enforcement aspect of this? And then the remaining component will be what other steps is going to be required by the applicant. Okay,
We have a
pull up.
couple of raised hands.
Yep, Mary, go ahead.
I think the enforcement order needs to say whether or not there's a restoration plan that needs to be submitted. If there's restoration, if not, then I don't know why we have an enforcement order then. If there's, if there's something that was damaged and it was just a matter of cease and desist, then, and they've done that, and there's no restoration immediately required. If you're not going to require another step to authorize work, then I don't know what the purpose is of the enforcement order any longer. So I think they need to either submit a restoration plan or make a determination that no restoration is required. I think your idea of amending the determination of applicability could work if those conditions that were described and any other that the commission wants to impose, the conditions that were provided by the applicant's representative, and any other conditions that the commission wants to apply to an amended determination of applicability. If there's no restoration required of dune grass, then the amended determination of applicability would apply, but the applicant hasn't requested that route, so.
Okay, Doug, go ahead.
Just to clarify, the left side of the house, there is an existing driveway there. The dumpster, as I understand it, was just pushed too far back, like too far back so that it did hit the slope of the dune. The second point is, Mr. Chairman, I think the enforcement order we're looking at was one of the ones that you issued. So I don't know if you want to be looking at my proposed my proposed enforcement order. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, again, and I am not a certified wetland scientist by any means, but I honestly didn't see, wholesale alteration that clearly requires restoration. And again, I would ask the commission, when you were there and you saw, where the material had been stockpiled on the grass, were any of you moved to feel that a restoration plan is required? I honestly couldn't make that call myself. We've offered to do one if the commission feels that damage is significant enough, or that at the end of construction, it hasn't, rebounded from being pressed.
Okay, Jody, we hear you on that. Diane, what questions do you have at this point?
No,
What
it's just
comment?
when you look at the actual order, when you're talking about the restoration plan, and I agree with, I see Mary's point, but I also I did see what's been done, and that's half the problem I have with this, is that I don't really see that things were altered all that much. If it turns out that the dune grass doesn't grow back, then I'd say, yeah, we need to restore it. But basically, if you look at it, the dune clumps are still all, they haven't removed anything. And even when we get into whether or not something was altered, I'm not even positive that anything was altered. Once the construction's done, likely the grass will grow back. And if it's not, then, so I don't even know that it needs a restoration plan at this point. That's my call.
So Diane, would you entertain a revised or an amended RDA?
I mean, then we get into conditioning RDAs, which we said we don't want to do, but which we do, even though we
Well,
say
you
we
know
don't
what,
want to do them.
we're in the middle of something
Yeah.
here that,
Yeah.
you know, what happens in construction is we can all predict the outcome and the finish line, but the means and methods that are used to get there are more clear cut on new construction than they are when you're trying to renovate an existing structure.
Yeah, and if you look at the order, I mean, it does, even if you don't have a restoration plan in place at this moment in time, it still says that the resource area alteration, so let's say the flattening of the dune grass resulting from the bad activity should be corrected, and that the resource areas returns their original condition. So we don't know if they're going to be returned. I mean, they would still, the enforcement order, I think, still would serve a purpose. Because if it's,
I agree.
That's it.
Okay. TJ, I'm just going down the screen. I'm not redlining anyone here
No.
purposely. You're next, Mary.
No, I'm all set.
Yeah. So TJ, would you entertain doing an amended RDA on this with keeping the enforcement order in place? Because I agree that the enforcement order is the safety blanket that if we need to do something, it's already there. It's preconditioned.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing the enforcement order with the amended RDA. And we can word it so that there's monitoring that goes on, for whatever amount of time need be to make sure that the final product is what it was originally.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Mary, your thoughts on an amended RDA? I really do like keeping the enforcement order in place. I think it just keeps everyone's feet to the fire. We can't predict if the grass is going to grow or not, but
Yeah,
what's your thought on that? Because
we can't just vote on amending the determination of applicability tonight because it requires public notice. So you would have to do that at your next meeting. We would have to have a request from the applicant to do that at the next meeting.
well, couldn't we do an administrative? That's what we did. I'm trying to think, what did we do on the Plum Island station where that they were required to pull out the docks at the end of the season? Then we did a administrative memorandum to the file that incorporated what they wanted to do.
Don't remember that one.
That was a modification to the conditions. The original condition was that between certain dates, they had to remove the planks that access the research station. And when they were doing the installation, they ended up determining that going in and removing them and reinstalling them every year was actually going to create more impact and had in the past in other areas created more impact than just leaving them in place for the full 3 years that the determination is valid.
But they came and
so
put that on the agenda.
Yeah, and
noticed
that
it,
was I asked them to submit a letter of request to modify. That was also a modification. I mean, they weren't suggesting an entirely new scope of work. That was a modification to allow them to keep planking out that was already there. Whereas this is, and somebody else can certainly go in, and the memo from town council is in the Dropbox for anyone who wants to look at it. I was just looking at it. There actually is an area where they do say the applicant must reapply for an RDA or a notice of intent to have the commission determine, either an RDA to have the commission determine whether this new scope of work has any impact and whether the WPA is in play, or a new notice of intent to actually permit that work. And that's not in the very last paragraph. The last paragraph sort of does a very broad stroke overview of what was said. But in I believe it's on the second page, it was like the second note that they made, it does say they must reapply.
Well, it's all with different conditions if we determine X, Y, and Z. I think the most accurate description was on the reference on the front page. What we should do, how we should amend and this and that. But again, this is the commission's determination. We're the finders of the facts. And I'll be honest, I just don't see where the project has changed that dramatically that it requires anything other than an enforcement order. The building inspector came back in my book with anything or required any further modification. I'd say it's a different project. I just don't see it as a different project than what was originally presented, albeit the rub on the description, not on the plan. But all right, do we, what's our pleasure? Do we have a motion to do something? Doug?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say one final thing before you vote. I, with all due respect, we are not proposing, nor did we do any different work. Okay, we had a violation. In doing that work, we had a violation where there was an encroachment on the dune and some potential alteration of the vegetation. It's clearly a violation. You've issued an enforcement order. I respectfully suggest what you need to do is modify that enforcement order to require us to put the protections in place, to monitor the grass to see if it comes back. And when we're done, the commission can come back out and determine at that point whether the grass is rebounded. If not, you can require us to do a restoration plan, which we will be happy to do. But, however we do it, I would ask the commission to consider allowing us to move forward with the construction work that was previously approved with the protections in place. I mean, this is addressing a violation. This isn't a change to the scope of work, a change of anything. The building inspector's already determined that. This is just like we were doing what we were supposed to do.
Yeah,
but we
Doug,
violated the wetland.
Doug, you're the original enforcement order. Owner obtained a negative determination of applicability of a second floor deck expansion, reconfiguration of roof line. Home has been significantly demolished down to existing foundation is being rebuilt. Violation, what was approved under the RDA issued DA. That's what the enforcement order primarily focused on. That's what was issued. So that's what we're addressing. Okay, Diane, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did, and then I did, and then I didn't know if I was just sort of arguing that, I leaning toward, doing the EO, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we're here because supposedly this was supposed to be an expansion of the existing second floor deck to match the dimensions of the first floor deck and a reconfiguration of the existing roof line with a slight expansion. Now, maybe it's bad on the commission for not further looking at the plans, but if it had been presented as it was more than an internal sort of project, we would not be here now. I'm sure of it.
Well,
That was it.
So team, I think what I'm gonna suggest is this. I think leaving the enforcement order in place, I will say the applicant's verbiage on protecting the resource is appropriate and gives me a comfort level that although we're not overly concerned, it guarantees the resource is going to be protected. And that I think the remaining issue is having the applicant request an amended RDA on this project. Because otherwise we're going to go around and around, and I truly think the existing RDA covers this project, other than the means and methods that were deployed to get there. But so what I'm suggesting is, do we consider the enforcement order as written, and with the note that the applicant is to submit an amended RDA?
Which enforcement order?
Well, the one I like the one, the draft one that was provided, Sam.
So the one that I have up right now that Doug provided?
Yes, and it was really the 2 paragraphs at the end that was the attachment.
Can I just say something, Bob?
Yeah, please, Dan, go ahead.
And to a certain extent, if we're going to go with the EO to, in effect, keep everything off the dune, why even have a new RDA filed? Because, you know, what are we going to say other than keep everything off the dune? And then that's going to be the end result. So then you get into them filing amended RDAs and all that. They're, you know, if we're saying that the scope of the work was already there because it was on the plan, and you know, if that's going to be sort of what we're gonna I don't even know that that's what we're going to say, but if I'm kind of saying like the footprint is the footprint, I don't really see what more impact rebuilding the house is going to have on the resource area. They submitted an amended RDA that says we're going to rebuild the house, we're going to leave everything off the dune, then we'll probably say, well, I don't know what we'll say, but I don't really even know what's to be gained by amending the RDA. We approved it. Well, you know, a negative determination. It's done.
Okay.
We have an enforcement order because they violated what they were supposed to do. And in effect, moving forward, it's done.
So proposing to keep the enforcement order in place and address the restoration of the resource only is the direction you're thinking.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't really know what's to be gained by submitting a new RD or an amended RDA. They submitted the RDA. We issued a negative determination. They messed up. But the footprint remains the footprint. And if they messed up and we have an enforcement order in place that leaves everything off of the dune, then why submit a new RDA or an amended RDA?
No, I don't
I
disagree.
agree with you, Diane.
I don't disagree with that.
I mean, I get that there's work. It's a different scope of work. I do get that, but I'm just, how
But they
is it
can't
going to
go on
further
the-
impact the resource area if they're not allowed to go on the dune?
Yeah, no, listen, that's why we're discussing it and with ad nauseum here. Well, do we have a motion to amend the current enforcement order as proffered by the I guess the violator? Or do we want to amend it? Is there any, Sam, what else would you like to see in the enforcement order? Set aside the other matters. Is there any other verbiage in those 2 paragraphs that would give you more comfort to ensure the restoration or replication of the primary resource area?
Going to be super honest with you, Bob. I don't think I'm the person that you want to ask about that, because my opinion on how this needs to be handled is
Sam, it's a
entirely
simple-
not
it's-
what you
it's a-
guys
It's
think.
a simple
so.
question on an enforcement order. So you have no concerns, is that your answer?
Oh, I have a
guess?
lot of concerns. Just
Well, we're looking at two particular paragraphs here on what temporary measures, what monitoring, what triggers for a planting schedule, and a timeline.
I mean, again, I have a lot of concerns, but it's not with this. So I think
Okay.
I think that's something that you guys need to discuss because my opinion on how this needs to be handled is vastly different from yours.
Okay, Diane,
So
you- all right, thank you, Sam. Diane, you get your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think if what would we require if they were to submit or an amended RDA that says we're going to rebuild the building and we're not going to go on the dune and we're going to, what other conditions? I think that's what needs to be considered as far as monitoring and, you know, in our own imaginations, what would we put in RDA for conditions?
Okay,
And
Is
it
that
would
a
be
question
things
for
like,
me,
it's to be
or-
monitored by the agent, it, you know, they flag the area, they keep everything off, they have to report maybe on a weekly basis. Things along those lines.
okay. Mary, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I understand where Sam is coming from in terms of not feeling comfortable crafting special conditions, but if this was an RDA and you were trying to craft special conditions for it, I'd want to have pre and post construction photographs. And I would want to have regular reporting on a weekly basis to the agent. And that no construction equipment at all be operated from the dune. So, I mean, they're gonna need ladders and whatever to do the siding, so they're gonna be working on the dune one way or another.
So,
There's gonna be,
Yeah, the interesting part, Mary, when you're out at the site, there's almost a 10-foot or 8-foot wide platform all the way around the house.
so they can work from that.
Yeah, they actually couldn't, the angle of the ladder to get on the dune would be, it just wouldn't be safe.
Right.
It's one of those rare occurrences on a primary dune where that all four sides of the house are either protected or they're actually driveways.
Yeah.
That there's not going to be any dune. It was the placement of the materials in the dune that honestly riled me up the most because we were so specific about not putting that there.
Right.
Okay. So Sam, you're adding in 3 and 4?
Yep. Is there anything else that needs to be added or?
Okay.
We could. Oh, Mary, you said weekly reports, right?
Yes. You know, you'd have to specify what would be in the report, you know, project status, proposed schedule for the following week. You know, any problems that they had, any damage that was done to the dune or anything like that, they would have to self-report.
Something tells me, Sam, you're going to keep an eye on this thing on a pretty regular basis.
So weekly reports on the status of the work, proposed work for the following week.
Any remediation measures that were necessary or something.
Yeah, Diane, I'm just letting Mary finish. I see
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
Anything else?
Anything, Diane, you had some comments?
Up the top, rather than having Sam be the person to verify the location, I think Doug mentioned that they were working with a wetland specialist, or they were working with someone, I thought.
Yes,
Maybe have the verification be through that person that could identify the area to be protected, unless you feel comfortable doing it, Sam. I'm just
I mean,
Doesn't
basically, you're putting a fence around the whole foundation.
around the dune.
I mean, you're
Fine with me.
isolating. Yeah, I mean, it's a snow fence. We're not, they got to keep off the dune, so everything around the building, other than the decks outside the footprint of the driveway and decks,
I don't think
is
we
off
want to,
limits.
what we want to give authorization to resume construction to their own wetland professional. I think it needs to be the
No,
conservation.
yeah, right, exactly.
That doesn't,
So take that out.
yeah.
Yeah, I would leave it just the way it was, Sam, because you were the trigger on.
Yeah.
On all of it, which is, I think, the appropriate.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, anything else we want to consider on this? All right, so we're going to go forward and adopt, amend the existing order, enforcement order as been presented here and modified. Is that our wish?
I'll move.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion to adopt this amended format of the enforcement order. TJ, are you seconding it?
Second, yep.
All right, so further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mary,
No,
Peter,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, so Sam, this enforcement order is the only governing document on this matter. And I think it gives you full authority to keep the board informed. And if you feel that we need a wetland replication at any point, that'll be fine. Okay, and once the snow fencing is in, and you're happy with it, it's and then work can resume. Okay, Sam, you had another matter. There's nothing else to be discussed on 20 Northern Boulevard. Sam, you had another matter on you wanted to talk about on remote meetings being
Yep.
done up front.
thank you,
Um,
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
good night.
So the last time that we got an extension, we held a vote to remain in virtual meetings. We did recently get another extension to allow us to remain in virtual meetings. The original one was through March 31st of 2023. Currently, it's through March 31st, 2025. If the commission so chooses, I just want to do a quick, for procedural sake, have a vote to remain in virtual meetings. If we want to put an end date to it that's before 2025, we certainly can. But if we're going to do it, we might as well go the full 2 years.
So is there a motion to continue remote monitoring to the end of time until the Commonwealth says we have to be back in person?
So moved.
Second.
I'll take that as a second. Roll call
Third,
vote.
fourth, fifth.
Diane, Pete,
Yes.
Mary,
yes.
TJ,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, anything else, team?
Do we want to do a property walk on 6 Olga Way before the meeting? Would that be helpful to get out there prior to
Yeah,
that, or?
I haven't even, that's
I
the one
haven't
that's
looked
being,
at it, if I'm being
that's the one
honest.
that's being re-advertised.
Yeah, when I sent out the agenda last week, I did make a note that in light of the issue that we had and the fact that they had to get delayed, if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, if you can send them to me by Thursday so that I can get them passed on to the applicants, just to hopefully keep things moving a little bit, and hopefully get them in and out and done on the 18th, including any requests for a site walk, so I can get those scheduled as soon as possible. That would be fantastic.
Okay.
So if we, I mean, do we want to discuss a site visit for Olga Way right now, or do we want to save that for?
If TJ wants to go, I'll go.
Are there any?
What about
haven't
Pete,
looked
me
at
and
it.
Mary? We
I don't
can't,
know what
we
it
don't
is.
matter? Well, you know what? I can just drive by it. I think pretty easy for us on our way home to drive by it, but
Yep, okay.
if you want to schedule it, my schedule is actually pretty jammed up for the next couple of weeks during the day, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it is
I'll
a
look
pretty,
at the plans.
it is a pretty small site too, for the most part. I drove by there last week. For the most part, you can probably see just about everything you would need to see from the street. We also, you guys, so we get a site visit authorization that covers the entire commission as well as myself and
Right.
any third-party reviewers that we have contracted. So you guys do have the I guess the right to go in. I would, of course, definitely maybe knock on the door really quick to see if anybody is home before you just go wandering around the backyard. But you know, you can certainly go anytime you want.
Yep, okay.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what, team? It's 9:30. And do we have a motion to adjourn unless there's some other business that we want to discuss?
So moved.
Second, Pete, second. All those in favor? Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors vote yes. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.